Good afternoon. My name is Michael Sparks, and today I'm going to be talking about an applied investigation into the current state of battery technology today. To start off, I'm going to speak a little bit about my motivations for this project, and then I'm going to work my way through a little overview about battery technology today, talk about some of the challenges of current batteries you'll see today, a little bit about my testing equipment, something about my experimental methods. I'm going to show you the mass amounts of data analysis that we used to crunch through all the numbers that we created using our equipment. Talk about how I determined internal resistance for all my tested batteries. Then we're going to go to my conclusion, acknowledgments, and references. To start out, as an example, to kind of bring this into something a little bit more realistic for you to rationalize, say you have a speaker system that draws 400 milliamps of current when it's operating, and has an operational voltage between 10.5 volts and 17 volts. This is a little bit of a price comparison between three different battery types. You've got alkalines, lead acids, and these new high-tech A123 systems, lithium iron nanophosphate cells that I'm actually very interested in and I'll be talking about later. As you can see, if you are a general consumer and you probably just want to use these once you're going to the beach, your best choice, outlined in green, would be to go with the 8 D-cell alkaline batteries. That would get you $21.15, cheapest of the three options. And it would also get you 30 hours of life on that one cycle. Now, if you wanted to run this speaker continuously for 100 weeks non-stop, and you were still looking for the most beneficial cost, alkalines would be way out of proportion, and your best choice would be to go with something that's very common in cars today, which would be the lead-acid battery. Now, on the other hand, if you wanted to run it for 500 weeks continuously, which is kind of a wild number, but it's the only number that I can, or the only amount of time I can give you to show the benefit of lithium iron nanophosphate batteries, your best choice would be the A123 cells, which even after 500 weeks of continuous running, you still don't have to change the batteries. All you have to do is recharge them. Similar with the lead-acid batteries, all you have to do is recharge them, but the lead-acid batteries will eventually become useless after a period of time in which their capacity slowly decreases. Here I have a little quote that was recently said by Honda Research and Development about 2 months ago. It says, "We lack confidence. It is questionable if consumers are prepared for the annoyances of lengthy charge times and limited range in their vehicles." So they're not sure that the battery technology is up to par with the demands of consumers right now. So they're saying they need a battery that charges faster, and they need a battery that has better range. That is a good benefit of, in the center you have the lithium iron nanophosphate batteries in a prismatic cell type. This right here, your cell phone battery, your laptop battery, a lot of them are prismatic cells, in which it is a flat cell rather than a cylindrical cell, which is what you're going to see later. But these nanophosphate cells, they're purported to have extremely high, you can discharge them at very high currents, and they also have an extremely long cycle life. So you can use them more times than your typical lithium-ion battery, and you can discharge them a lot quicker. Here are a couple of the challenges that you can see with current batteries. Lithium cobalt, that's what you have right here, and in most of your cell phones, probably also your laptops. It doesn't exactly have low cycle life. It has an alright cycle life. It's very toxic. It's a safety hazard. You don't want to pierce these. You don't want to. If you're driving a car that's powered on lithium cobalt, such as the Tesla, I don't know if you've heard of it. It's a new electric car. If you crash that into a wall and doesn't have the proper protective circuits, it will blow up in a very extreme fashion compared to a typical crash you might see with your general automotive car. Next, we have the lead-acid battery. It has low cycle life, low energy density. It's really heavy, and you can't discharge it at a very high rate. And the third cell here, I have the A123 Systems lithium iron nanophosphate batteries. Although these nanophosphate batteries, they're very safe. They're a lot safer than lithium cobalt. Although they still are dangerous, as you can see in the top right. Here's a Honda Prius that had a battery pack built with lithium iron nanophosphate cells. And even though that these cells are so much safer than all the other lithium technologies, they were still capable of igniting and creating fire due to faulty connection by the person who built the car. Next, I'm going to talk about my testing equipment. The main device used here was the West Mountain Radio Computerized Battery Analyzer 3. It is USB powered, and it plots out a different data point for every single second Great benefit of this thing is we could discharge a battery and leave it running overnight for days and days without having to monitor it personally. So it saved a lot of time, and it was very useful. Also, the data could go right to Excel, and I could pop it from Excel into MATLAB once I organized it. Next, we have multiple different cells of many different chemistries. We needed an efficient way to charge all those different cell types without having to buy a specific charger for each cell, because that would be costly. So purchasing this Turnigy AccuCell 6 charger, we were able to, it's pre-programmed to charge different cell types or different chemistry types, and it was very useful. Some of my experimental methods: I weighed each battery, I calculated the volume of each battery, I did some testing and made some measurements to calculate the internal resistance for each battery. I also did a low current discharge to determine maximum amp hour rating, and I did a high current discharge to help me determine how fast I could actually discharge this battery. Here's a little data comparison of all the data I collected. Here on rated, in the rated column, those are the numbers I pulled off data sheets. In the tested columns, those are the numbers that I pulled through experimental research personally. As you can see, the lithium-ion nanophosphate battery is the second column. It has the lowest internal resistance of all of these batteries, and that's another reason that you can discharge it at such a high rate, and also another reason that it has such a high cycle life compared to the other batteries. And you can also see that it also, in terms of error, it was pretty on par with what it was rated for. And unfortunately for the lithium polymer battery, I was unable to pull any rated numbers because the lithium polymer battery I used was actually out of my cell phone. For the next, here we have the lithium iron, just the generic lithium iron phosphate battery without the nanotechnology. As you can see, the half amp discharge seemed to have done pretty well. The 10 amp discharge was all right, but when I tried to discharge it at an extremely high current, 16.5 amps, it failed completely. Here on the other hand, the lithium iron phosphate battery using nanotechnology discharged it at up to 40 amps, and it still reached its rated capacity. Also on this chart, I have the charging curve. I did a charge cycle using the battery charger. I charged it at 1 amp, and I discharged it at 1 amp. Using MATLAB and finding the area under both those curves, we found that the efficiency of the charge efficiency was 99%. So out of all the energy that we put into the battery that we used to charge it, using the charger curve, 99% of that energy we were able to take out of it. So that is very good. Here we have lithium, manganese, nickel. It did just on par. Everything was just as expected. And as a side note, all of these discharge curves you're seeing here are also going to be seen on a Ragone chart. Each curve is its own point on the Ragone chart. Here we have lithium polymer. This is my cell phone battery. It did pretty well. Unfortunately, I had a couple problems with faulty connections. It was very difficult to solder to those little tabs right there. So in the middle of my test right here, it disconnected several times, and I had to rush to put it back together. But still, it fortunately seems to have done pretty well. Here's my Ragone chart. I put a real Ragone chart up, or Ragone chart, my bad, up for comparison. Here are 3 different alkaline discharge curves you have, and then you can also see where they correspond with the Ragone chart on the right. So my experimental data actually lined up pretty well with what you'd expect for a Ragone chart. You have the lithium batteries here, and then you have the lithium chemistries here. These squares right here are the lithium iron nanophosphate batteries, which were capable of being discharged up to 40 amps. And then right here is when I discharged the generic lithium iron phosphate battery at 16.5 amps. And as you can see, it did not, it cannot compare with the power density of the lithium iron nanophosphate batteries. And then my batteries, which were best for energy density, turned out to be my cell phone battery and the cylindrical lithium manganese nickel battery that I discharged. Here's a little table on how I calculated internal resistance. I did that taking 3 measurements. What we did first is we took the open circuit voltage of the battery. We also had a known resistor because we took, right here's a resistor that we determined its value based on what the expected value of the internal resistance of the battery was. So we know the value of this resistor, we know the open circuit voltage of the battery, and you find that by taking a voltmeter hooking up to the battery. And we also know, with the use of that voltmeter right there, what the voltage drop is across the resistor. Using those 3 measurements, you can then calculate internal resistance. And here's an image right here of what I actually did. You have the battery right there. This is a large resistor. It's about 7 or 10 different high power resistors hooked up in parallel. And then the test begins when I hook that wire up right there, and then the circuit is completed. To conclude, I plan on doing several things with batteries in the future. To begin, I'd like to eventually team up with UV Robotics, and because they currently use lead-acid batteries. That's the power pack right there. And once again, those lead-acid batteries have reached the end of their cycle as expected because they don't have a large cycle life compared to lithium iron nanophosphate cells. So I'm planning on hopefully getting enough research and enough backing to eventually find a cost-efficient solution to replace these batteries. I'm also going to be looking into possibly powering got to start off slow. Start off maybe an electric scooter, an e-bike. I'd also like to look into more cutting-edge batteries, such as the lithium iron nanophosphate batteries. Those are some rare cells that it was quite difficult to acquire. I'm also going to look into prismatic cells, because all my tests here were mostly cylindrical cells. And then I'm also going to, if I can roll back through, that's bad. As Derek was talking about how temperature came into play with his batteries, taking a look at this discharge curve right here, I don't have the video today, but as over time, the temperature of these cells increased and also the voltage did. So I'd also like to look into in the future if higher temperature is actually a good thing for certain batteries depending on your application. And for acknowledgments, I'd like to thank CSTEP faculty and staff. I'd like to thank Shauna Crump-Owens. I'd like to thank Daniel Muffaletto, my advisor Jennifer Zernheld, my partners Derek Grimm and Antonio Upia, and